Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 380. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Howdy ho, neighbor.
Connor's, I don't know, dodging fireworks somewhere in a blaze of glory. No, what am I saying? It's not a blaze of glory. It's fumbling into the flames and dying miserably.
If it's anything like his dog defense, he's in trouble.
Anywho, this is a DC Comics podcast. We get together, we talk about the week's books that we read. It is a fifth week, so you know it's going to be a weird batch of books, but that's okay. Coming up on today's show, we've got Detective Comics 1076. We have Batman Catwoman The Gotham More Scorched Earth issue 1. We have Supergirl Special issue 1. We're doubling back and talking about City Boy issue 5, which came out 2 weeks ago. And then I've got a Patreon book. I did them both since it's a week 5, but next week's actually just as quiet for books, so I'll do the other one then. But yes, I'll be talking about American Vampire Second Cycle issue 1. So it's a cobbled together fifth week, but it's not bad. We've had worse. So
yes, definitely.
We'll do what we can. The more important thing, though, this week is that Matt grew a pair and watched Terrifier 2. So I am delighted to be able to ask how much he loved it.
Here's the thing. I love the mythos that's being at play there more than I enjoy the actual experience of watching the movie.
Yeah. I love the experience. I love the experience of 1. I love the experience of 2. But the mere fact that there's a mythos to even talk about coming out of Terrifier 2 was what blew me away. I was not expecting to come out of it thinking about theories and stuff that was going on.
Yeah, I still need to watch All Hallows Eve before I can start piecing things together. So yeah, I will say that whoever plays Art the Clown that man is a physical genius. Just the stuff that he's able to do just with looks and head tilts and body, and you know, I'm assuming heavy prosthetics, right?
At least makeup. I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of a nose or something put on.
Yeah, nose, chin type deal. But he's very expressive nonetheless. Oh yeah. And these scenes that should be just utterly brutal, the fact that he's laughing and having a good time, it makes me conflicted. That is
a man who loves what he does.
Yes, 100%.
You can't deny that fact.
You love what you do, and it's never a job, right? No. But yeah, there's a lot of play. I mean, Terrifier 1 is pretty straight and to the point, like kind of slasher movie. Kind of plays the tropes a little bit. Terrifier 2, I don't know what... like, it's not like a horror movie. I don't know how to class it anything else because of... It's like almost like an epic horror movie. Because of
it's the Godfather. It's the Godfather Part 2 of the slasher movie genre.
Yeah, and normally I would laugh at that, but it's the best comparison I can think of.
And the third one's going to be set at Christmas. The teaser trailer was playing with a re-release of 2 this week, but it did leak on Twitter, so I did see it. Yeah, potato quality and all that, but it's just a little. It's just he's wearing a Santa hat, and that's kind of awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, very, very interesting. I am a fan of, what's her name? The character.
The main girl. Yeah.
Yes. Instantly, with seeing her costume and her whole story, I was like, oh, this is a character I can get behind. I hope nothing too terrible happens.
It's so funny actually, because something that comic book movies do especially now a lot, ever since Nolan did this with the Batman trilogy, is they'll do their origin movie or their first movie out the gate, but they'll save the main villain for the second movie. I loved it Terrifier because the slasher franchise did the other way around, where it starts with the villain because that's the star, the slasher franchise, and the second movie introduced, here's his real, like, good person nemesis. Like, I actually think that's wonderful, and I'm excited to see Christmas antics with Art next year.
Let that guy cook. Let the writer director, because it seems like that's all he's worked on is Terrifier.
Pretty much. He did there was a couple of short movies. Then he did All Hallows Eve, which is an anthology where one story is Art. It's worth mentioning all of those. It's a different actor playing Art, so that's worth a bit. But Terrifier is where it really clicked, and then Terrifier 2 is like this like really ambitious thing, which was made for less than $1 million. It is absurdly low budget.
Great because they updated some of the effects on some of the characters from the first movie that make it into the second. You know, they worked on the effects there, made it definitely look way more expensive than that. So good on them.
Yeah, honestly, there's movies that cost 10 times as much that look far, far cheaper.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It just shows what happens when the people behind it have got talent and they care and they put in the effort. And
yeah, it's definitely, they talk about that filmmaking is a collaborative, and Terrifier definitely feels like that.
Yeah.
Everyone's showing up and working, but yeah, no, definitely on the other side now. So that bedroom scene will live with me forever from Terrifier 2. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
I was cackling with laughter when I saw that. The reason why this is prolonged... it was fun. It's hilarious. It's a hilarious scene.
I just remember that you fell asleep during Terrifier 2 because of jet lag.
Yeah, I was jet lagged, right? I love the movie. It was nothing to do with the movie. But that bedroom scene, basically they shut down production because of the pandemic for a while. And basically during that time, the director and a couple of people basically just kept making more stuff to put into that scene because they had time. They had nothing else to do. So that scene just kept getting bigger and more ridiculous.
Yeah. Just when you think you've seen it all, another thing happens.
Yes. Anywho, I just wanted to ask Matt about Terrifier 2 because it was one of my favorite movies from last year. And plus, making Matt watch movies he's uncomfortable with is one of my favorite hobbies.
This wasn't under the skin. This was just, it's icky. Like I can handle like over the top gore better than I can stuff that makes me think and makes me bored. You know what I mean? But however, no matter how much I disliked Under the Skin, it is a movie I think about at least on a monthly basis. So yep. So that ending especially.
It's under your skin, you might say.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Well, there you go. There's some Matt movie updates for you to start off the show. I don't think I've anything particularly exciting to mention for this past week. October's over. I finally have... I don't have a streams episode to edit every day practically, so that's nice. I feel like I can slow down a little bit, so that's good. Get ahead in TV stuff again. But Gen V finale was yesterday, so that's wrapped up its season.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know, nothing particularly noteworthy. Which and sometimes we'll have some small talk at the start. I'm letting it kind of flesh out a little bit here just because there's no news this week. But don't worry, Matt's favorite segment will always be, and that is the ComiXology Top 10. Do you want that Top 10, Matt?
No, because DC, according to my count, didn't have 10 books that came out this week. So I'm curious to see what sneaks in there.
Yeah, you want that juicy top 10. I know you do.
I don't really.
You want it bad. I know you do.
Nope.
I'm going to give you that top 10, Matt.
No, I don't want it. No, thank you.
Tough. When it comes to top 10s, consent is not an issue, okay? Right? You're getting the top 10.
Spoken like a true bad guy.
Just inflicting top 10s upon Matt whenever he's least expecting it. Well, no, he should be expecting it. We do it every start of every show. It should be the most expected thing in the world.
I'm ready for it.
All right, okay. Top 10 for Tuesday. First of all, would you like to guess what the number one book from Tuesday is?
I'm gonna guess it's Batman Catwoman Scorched Earth.
Unfortunately, it is. I can't lie and pretend it's something else. Number 2, bizarrely, is not a DC book. It's actually Avatar: The Last Airbender, Azula in the Spirit Temple, which is this
okay.
Where's a page count? Oh, it's 80 pages. So it's not. I thought it was maybe a collection, but it seems to be a big one shot instead.
Okay,
so, fair enough. People like that Last Airbender stuff. It's not my Avatar, obviously. I'm all about the Iwa, and Pandora.
Yeah, the mighty Ikran.
Yeah, Jake Sully, Natiri, Quaritch, Norm, Race. I don't know. Every time someone says they like Avatar, some asshole in there says, "Oh, name a character from Avatar." Well, there's like 6. Piss off.
Pete's been practicing. Tarzan Kid. I haven't seen Avatar 2, but I hear there's a Tarzan kid.
Yeah, there's a kid with a Tarzan-esque look to him, yes. That's not his name, though. Anyway, number 3 is Supergirl Special, issue 1.
Hey,
number 4 is Detective Comics 1076. Number 5 is that Return of Superman 30th Anniversary Special one-shot thing. And then number 6 is JLA GSA Vice, Virtue and Vice, which is obviously a collection. And then Spirit World issue 6.
Oof.
I know. And then the Aquaman and Lost Kingdom special, which, you know, that's your tie into your new movie coming out soon, and it's like under a couple of collections. That's a bit
zero heat for that.
Yeah, no one cares. Ice cold. Then number 9 is Star Wars: The High Republic collection. Number 10 is a reprint of Batman Gotham by Gaslight. And then so it's just a weird week. Okay, DC had like what 5 books, and then like a sort of collection, a sort of reprint anniversary issue. And then I know there was some new stuff in it as well, but still, you know, it's a very, very weird week, right? Marvel, on the other hand, don't necessarily schedule around 4 weeks, so they tend to just sort of shift things to week 5. So a little bit different. You got a guess for Wednesday?
Oh yeah, it's Ultimate Universe number 1.
That's correct. New Ultimate Universe kicked off.
And usually I can also tell by the buzz on Twitter, through Comics Twitter. I saw a lot of buzz about the Ultimate Universe this week. So, yeah. I have no idea how this is working. So, but it's Hickman, so you guys have fun.
Yeah, number 2 is X-Men. Number 3 is Avengers. Number 4 is Spider-Boy issue 1 by Dan Slott. Dan Slott just can't keep away from Spider-Man in some form.
Who the hell is Spider-Boy?
It's an excellent question. I have no idea.
I'm gonna look this up.
I'm not sure I care that much, to be honest, but did him and MJ have a son who's grown up quickly?
It says, spinning out of the pages of Dan Slott and Mark Bagley's monumental Spider-Man run, here comes the spectacular Spider-Boy. After the events of End of the Spider-Verse, Spider-Boy's secret history as Spider-Man's sidekick was forgotten. Oh, so this is just the JSA kids popping up, but for Spider-Man.
Oh, okay, this is a Judy Garrick then. All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5 is The Sacrificers issue 4. That's a Rick Remender image book. Number 6 is Scarlet Witch. 7 is Doctor Strange. 8 is Venom. 9 is Star Wars. And 10 is Magneto. So hey, we got one image book in the top 10. Yeah. That's nice. In fact, just outside the top 10, number 11 is King Spawn.
Okay.
So, which is up to issue 27. I didn't realize there was a whole second Spawn ongoing on top of the main one. But
yeah.
Fair enough. That's a thing. So there you go. I mean, yeah, there's the usual assortment of things. There's a Gargoyles comic. There's a Power Rangers Academy book. There's all sorts of things. Some Star Trek comics. The usual parade. So very good. All right. And Walking Dead Deluxe 76 is that just them putting color into the comics?
Probably. I have no idea.
I think it is. I could be wrong, but I think that's what that is. Which I guess is doing all right if it's, you know, charting at all with that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's charting, then yes.
So, fair enough. Well, there you go. That is the ComiXology top 10. You know, week 5s, they're a bit weird. Yeah, not much to say on it, but hey, it is what it is. But with that said, we can get into talking about the comics. So we'll rip off the... No, we won't. We'll leave that till second. Detective Comics 1076. Ram V writing with Jason Shawn Alexander on the art. Which is a new name to me. I don't recognize... Well, I know Jason Alexander, who plays George Costanza.
Yes.
But pretty sure that's not the same guy.
Yes.
Just sneaking suspicion.
But if they're related, though, like second cousins.
Yeah. He could be his son for all we know.
Yeah.
This could be Jason Jr.
JJ?
JJ, yeah, why not?
So I'm glad we're starting with the better of the Bat books this week. Sure. Because just straight out of the gate, I'm trying to praise this book as much as I can, so as many eyes can get on it, because I really enjoyed the first part. Because on the credits page, they call this like the next part. They call it intermezzo, which I'm sure in the opera is the break or whatever. However, I feel like Ram B has ramped it up with the story in this one by shifting the perspective from just being about Bruce and Batman to Gotham as a whole. It's really opened up his story about the Orgums and what they want to do to Gotham and what that's going to mean for other people, not just Bruce. And I was not shocked because I was already enjoying it, but how much I liked the story in this book, I was not ready for.
Yeah, it's very good. I've been enjoying this part of the overall saga even more than the first part. Now that the pieces are in play, I really enjoyed the Batman being taken over and sort of try to cling on to his humanity by going to all these places in his memory. Last issue, this issue, he's held captive by the Orgums and Arzen specifically, and he's basically just waiting to be hanged. Like that's what's happening here. And one of the things that we've been talking about since the start of this run is that Batman doesn't have Alfred, so maybe he's leaning on Gordon a little bit more for that, and it very much the people around him. So I think it is a very wise narrative choice to switch to. It's actually, funnily enough, and it's almost like Ram V, and I'm not saying he is, but it's almost like he's kind of throwing shade on how crappy the other stuff is right now by having it shift to Selina. And there's one throwaway reference to, we're not in great terms right now, and that's the only reference you get to the whole Batman Catwoman war that's going on, because it shifts to her, and she's the one taking it upon herself to put a team together to try and save Batman. When she finds out from some mystery person in a cloak who works with the Orgums,
who dressed like a ninja.
It's like a ninja. Yeah. We could theorize maybe who that is in a bit, but she finds out that Batman's going to be hanged and immediately sort of starts springing into action. The art here, by the way, is fantastic. See when she comes into like her room and she's in her black dress and this ninja's waiting for her. There's a really simple thing in the art here that I really liked, where it goes into like silhouette, where it's just kind of like this orange background, and it's like she's blocking a kick or something, right? But they're just in silhouette, so they're just pitch black, and behind them's this orange background. What I really liked is that in the very next panel, it flips it, and now the background is pitch black, and they're kind of got the orangey coloring, sort of still kind of in a like cutout form, but the swapping of the colors gave it this real sense of like, I don't know, like, do you know, like if you watch like a kung fu movie and like they'll throw a punch and block, and they'll sort of pause when they do that, and then there'll be a beat, and then they'll throw the second punch. That's what it felt like to me. It felt like, punch, block, pause, punch, block, pause. It gave it this momentum in a weird way, even though I'm saying it gave me
and
there's like a there you go.
I was gonna say there's like a pacing to it, right? So it makes it feel, even though like it's all still art, it gives it a flow and like a sense of like cinematography, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah. I felt like crunch from it. It was really nice. We'll talk more about that in a bit though. So she goes on this mission to build a team, and she goes to Jim Gordon and says, "Hey, our mutual friend's in trouble." And there's a bit of banter here about like, she calls him commissioner, and he's like, I've not been commissioner for ages. And she's like, yeah, but that's not going to stop you, is it? And he's like, well, once a lawman, always a lawman. And basically he's like, hey, right now it's just us, but I'm going to try and put a team together to save him. And I love this idea, because we've been talking so much about the city protecting Batman, that now we're actually getting to this sort of the heart of the story, which is the people that he's built up around him who are going to be the ones to actually save him. And that's actually kind of beautiful. It gives it a lot of heart in a way that, I think some people who write Batman forget to put that in it.
Well, there's the Bat family. We talk about the Bat family so often, but here it's going even beyond the family to like, not his acquaintances, but like they are the people he's relied on within the city that just know him as Batman. It's
interesting that it's going. Obviously, Gordon's the closest. Well, maybe Selina technically, but right, they're the two closest to him. But then it seems to be like the rest of this issue, the main story seems to be introducing the other members, at least so far. There might be more next time. But we get Azrael introduced for the purpose of like he's probably going to be recruited into this, right? Gordon goes to Montoya, who is like, no, I can't really help you, Jim, and he's like, I just want you to be aware, and if there's like any trouble coming, I want you to warn me, you know, and at least if you're not going to get involved too heavily, at least you're asking the right questions. And the word questions, Baldy, they love to do that with Montoya now. They love to emphasize the word question. And I love the art in those pages as well. As the art here is really good. I actually really like the art in this.
It's so, you said we'll talk about the art in a minute, but what I like here is like there's a moodiness to it that makes it feel like a grittiness that wasn't there before. Like everything before this was kind of a little bit more opulent and kind of like the Orgums themselves. Well, here it's because it's following Catwoman, you know.
Well, not everything, because
it's grittier.
Because the last couple issues were different again, right? So there was like the art up until that point, and then these last couple issues with Batman kind of being infected with the asthma, that changed style, and then we've changed style again to shift to this. Yeah. And obviously this might just be a scheduling thing, especially since this is double shipping for a couple of months, but it's it kind of works out in the sense that because we have switched perspective, it wouldn't surprise me if we return to either the original artist or even Francavilla after we're done with this, you know, intermission period where it's focusing on Selina and the other characters, who then obviously she then goes to Ivy and she wants her to make her something, which is interesting because it doesn't sound like Gordon's going to go on the mission with Selina, and it doesn't sound like Ivy's going to go on the mission with her. So I wonder if she's getting help from all these people, but the actual people she maybe takes in for the fight might end up being the Bat family themselves. I mean, we'll see where that goes.
It definitely feels like Ocean's 11 when she's assembling the people. We just don't know who these people are yet, right? Yeah. We just know it's going to have something to do with Ivy. She's making her something. And, you know, when Gordon goes to talk to Montoya, almost setting that edge, you know, of the question. So, but yeah, I really liked all those pages. The page where Selina's talking to Gordon and they're in that little dive bar, there's this spot where they're talking and there's just straight chaos going around them, right? There's like this big bar brawl going, and it's almost providing cover, and it's kind of like what's going on in the city in and of itself, right? To where there's so much chaos going on, they're not being noticed, and that Selina's going to use this to her advantage.
Yeah, and we also have early on, like we get a little bit of because all this setup is actually 3 days in the past. The book actually starts in what is currently present day, which is, you know, Arzin talking to Bruce and coming in and saying, hey, the fact that you're even holding on this long is actually very impressive. Most people are gone pretty instantly, but because you're holding on, the asthma's going through your system and it's going to be taking every part of you. And we get this like couple of pages sort of inside Bruce's head of seemingly like a lot of the small memories that are inconsequential have already been taken, and a lot of it's like sort of like bathed in like, you know, it's all colored red, but the part that isn't is Alfred hugging young Bruce, and it's like that's like the most important memory he has, right? Yeah. Which I actually kind of love. I love that it's not the death of the parents, it's Alfred holding him that's like been spotlighted here as the main thing that he's going to lose.
Yeah, and that also goes with the backup from last time too, where we got the you know, the Bat Demon taking Bruce being juxtaposed with the stuff that Alfred was doing.
Well, on the second page of this, we get the big creature coming in, and what seems to be the bat creature that's representing sort of Bruce's defense system is trying to hold it off whilst young Bruce is still being held by Alfred. It's a really... Like, I feel like if anything, this visual makes it just so clear what was happening last issue in Bruce's head. We just didn't have all the pieces yet. But this is like, no, he's fighting off these things being taken from him. And he was going to all those places to rekindle those memories, to hold on to them in some form. And the one that's keeping him clinging is the memory of Alfred. And it's like, it's all really well done. And this image of his bat trying to face off against this bigger... creature is just so good.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about when Gordon goes to talk to Montoya, right, and about the asthma in of itself. You know, he talks about how there's really being two Gothams built right now, and that like from what we know, right, with what Arzin had just told Bruce about how the asthma takes the people quicker, and how that was being used on the homeless population, right, in Gotham. And so Gordon points out to Montoya, like, there's these two Gothams being built right now where the people up in the high offices and high apartments are being able to steer clear of these people that have been corrupted by the asthma. So we're almost like,
well, it's not just
homeless...
I don't think it's the asthma though. They mentioned the reality engine. It was the broadcast. It's the broadcast
right,
that the women did that seems to have affected the population. I don't think they've affected. I mean, obviously they had the homeless people down in the sewers and that, right? They had them, and they've probably got the asthma.
That's what I was going to get to. In conjunction with the reality engine, right? It's creating this thing about how dangerous the lower people of Gotham are, right? And everything that the organs are doing are creating that divide even more. So it's just feeding the reality engine, you know? And so I really like that that's Gordon and Montoya talking about that. These two people that are supposed to, you know, protect all of Gotham, right? Talking about, you know, the division that's going on and what's been there. So,
well, part of what makes this so strong is that this is legitimately what politicians and like political parties try and do with their propaganda. They try and create these divides and sort of feed one group against the other to create conflict to get results for themselves. So the idea that Ram V is sort of taking that and turning it up to 11 with these characters who are directly like effectively brainwashing people, like in a very literal sense in this case, is really good stuff. It gives it all this weight because you can sort of like see what all of it's representing in the real world. All of it has some kind of analogy that it's going for, which is really good. But yeah, I like the art is really nice throughout. Like I'd never heard of this artist, and I feel like it fits the mood of everything so well. The small moments of action that are there are very good. It's not a very action heavy, you know, issue. Of course, it's not that type. But this moody like building of the team and the idea that the people around Batman are the ones that are going to have to come and save him now is, you know, all he has to do is mentally hold on. And they do a little bit of that, you know, Batman's truly special because he's still talking. He's still fighting it enough to verbally talk back. And Arzen's like, wait, how are you even still talking? Like, this is madness, this. As far as who the leaker is, you know, the ninja that comes and tells Selina what's going on, like, part of me thought that could maybe be Arzen himself, because obviously we know he said something last issue about how, oh, the Batman has to be hanged, but maybe Bruce Wayne can still be saved. Now, we know that scene at the start of this issue where he's talking to Bruce is 3 days after everything else, so maybe when he says, oh, I've done everything I can, maybe he's referring to going to talk to Selina. It's the only, I mean, that seems reasonable enough, but I don't know. It could be something else as well.
Yeah, whoever it is, they really focus on the green eyes, right? There with Selina. Says, you know who he is behind the mask, right? I don't know who within the Orgum Inner Circle would do that, right? Except for Arzen, because of what we, you know, found out in the last one where he considers Bruce a friend, right? So but it is a mystery because we still have, you know, Ra's at play in his league, right? Because of his ties to the Orgums and Arzen's history and all of that type of stuff too. So wouldn't surprise me if it's also someone from that side of things that's just in the inner circle. But it's probably the obvious.
Yeah. Right? Also, that very first panel of this book is gorgeous. It's the old Arkham ruins, and it's just this sort of black silhouette almost against the moonlight of whatever's left of Arkham, and it just looks spooky. It's got this atmosphere to it. It just sets you right up for the tone of the book, and everything between this feeling like it's a dark world where everyone's getting a bit more violent and like the divide is like spreading and the chaos is spreading. It's making me think of Metropolis, not Superman, the movie from 1927. It's making me think of season 3 of Twin Peaks. And I know these are references that you might not be getting as much, but like this idea of these seeds of disruption and unrest are being spread to create chaos is the tone this gave me was making me think of those two things. So yeah, there's like a sadness, a disease sadness spreading throughout the city of Gotham. And the good people that are left are going to have to try and fight it and fix it and like beat it back, and that's exciting.
Cool. And it's making, and Ramvy's done a very good job of making this feel like a Gotham centric event, right? And there's not a bunch of tie-ins. However, you know, this shifting to focus on Gordon and Selena, and then Azrael popping up, and Ivy, and you know, all these other characters, right? It makes it feel very Gotham specific and a bigger story than that's actually being told. And I really like that.
It's worth mentioning as well that he went out of his way to, obviously Gordon's been a recurring character in this detective run, and even with Selena, he went out of his way to have Selena pop in for those 2 issues relatively recently. Remember where she sort of saved them from in the water? And you might argue it doesn't need to do that because, hey, it's a Batman comic and Selena Kyle might show up. Absolutely. But it is a good example of writing in an ongoing book like this to establish that certain characters are a part of your ongoing story. Like, I'm not saying Selena Kyle needs to be introduced to the audience so we all understand who she is when she shows up, but it feels like, oh, she's not just popping up out of nowhere when she does show up. It's already established that she is part of this story in some way. He did that sort of heart-to-heart between them those however many issues ago to seed the fact that she is around, she's going to be a part of this. So when she pops up here, you can think about everything going on in the other book, but you're not really. You're thinking back to the last time she was in this story, and that time was this more heartfelt kind of exchange where it felt like 2 people who still very much loved each other, but obviously there's a lot of, you know, shaky stuff around it. But
it definitely feels way more informed by his Catwoman run and what their relationship was there than it does anything else that's been going on. Because that's what I thought of, right? And there'll be more reasons why that, you know, comes in with when we touch on the backups and whatnot. But it's definitely, you know, him seeding these things throughout. It's just good storytelling.
Absolutely. Because I was saying the same thing. I just reviewed the final episode of Gen V, and there's 1 or 2 smaller characters from the boys in the finale, but both of them had been set up in the show early in the season, so it didn't just feel like a cheap out of nowhere, here's a character from the boys. It's like, no, it established that they were a character in this show, so if you hadn't seen the boys, you'd still have some frame of reference for why it's, you know, why it's a bigger deal these characters are here and possibly in danger and that kind of thing. And I'm feeling the exact same thing with this. Like, Ram V set up Selena Kyle as a character in this run, and that's smart.
And she's already rescued Batman once, right? Of course she's gonna. Yeah, that was gonna try to do it again.
Yeah, that was like a really simple version of saving, which is just, you know, grabbing him before he drowns. Whereas this is a lot more complex. This is a heist. Let's just put it. She actually says that to someone later on. This is a heist, which is, to be fair, if she's an expert at anything, it's a heist.
It's right. She's great at stealing, including Batman's heart. Yeah, so
she knows her stuff.
But it's just Ram V's Gotham is one that I really like. Like we talk about these cities becoming characters throughout comics, but like between this and his Catwoman run, it feels like a city that I've been to. And that's really strong storytelling.
Yeah. And honestly, that second last page of the story where you see Catwoman, because she's not been in costume the whole issue, she's been just Selena Kyle.
Yeah.
That first panel of her in costume, like sort of crouched down, surrounded by like the various vines and stuff. I love how deep the black is on that outfit. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
If I have any critique, is I'll just say it ended very suddenly, where I'm like, oh, it's already over. I was kind of hoping that because it was an extra issue that maybe they were going to do a thing where it got all the backup space as well, but you know, that's what it is.
I didn't expect there to be so many backups.
Right?
So
there's technically 3, although the last one's only 2 pages, so it's not like it's extending the length that much, but it's definitely a bit longer than they have been though, right? This is more like the Action Comics issues recently.
Because this was how many pages? I have 45 on here.
So yeah, very strange. I will confess, so there's 3 backups. I read 2 of them. I didn't read the first one because you know, obviously I like the idea of reading the Montoya story where she puts the question mask on and stuff. I sort of skimmed it and saw that, but I hated the art so much that I just didn't want to read it.
The art was not bad. It's just it needs a better inker.
Maybe
because...
it looks so flat and not in a way that you know, it's not like a Francavilla flat where it's like really stylish looking. It just looks.
Yeah, because Francovilla's flat, but there's depth to it at the same time because he plays the shadows.
Yeah.
Here, there's not a lot of that. But yeah, so basically, in this is Montoya gets a call from this mom saying that her husband's been up to something, but she doesn't know when because he's always around. And so this leads to Montoya donning the mask because, you know, people start to be like, you know, you used to be a cop that asked questions, right? And there's just the reoccurring theme of asking questions. And so Montoya starts wondering to herself, well, what are the ethics of the police commissioner also being a vigilante, right? Because now we're getting into some serious things, but they're kind of, you know, she talks to some of these, you know, smaller cops in the police station, like kind of the patrol guys and, you know, smaller detectives, and they're like, yeah, no, it's airtight. Like, you know, he says where he said he's been, you know, we really can't prove anything. The wife dropped off this tape, but that she says are screams that he recorded of these murders that he's committing, but they can't trace them. They can't place them. And he claims they're from, you know, his favorite horror movies. And Montoya's like, that's creepy, but it's not illegal, right? Like, so at the same time, she's, you know, wondering all this. She's playing with the Rubik's Cube. And you know, she pulls the question gear out of this drawer, and she's like, look, I have this, right? I shouldn't do it, but there's also a bottle of booze, which I also shouldn't do. So really, if I'm trying to be my true self, I mean, is it the mask or the bottle? Which then cuts to her with the get up on chasing this guy, you know, following him, where she follows him through, and this is where the art really looks good because it plays with the colors. There's a magenta, a blue, and a green, and they kind of they're spread around the panels that it creates a sense of flow, you know, for the city. And they're following this guy whose name is Connor Tatar, and he works in a textile factory. He works on the machines, Connor. Right? He works at 2 grocery stores, you know. So the only screams from those, you know, there was no screams coming from a grocery store. So where else could he? And it ends up question ends up at a elementary school that's all abandoned, and that's where he is. And so there's a struggle. He wants to know how she figured it out, and she's like, well, you know, this screams to cover screams. So he would go in underneath this school during recess when the kids were being loud, and that's where he would commit his murders. He says the violence is easy, call and response, question and answer. And Montoya proceeds to beat the stuffing out of this guy with the Rubik's Cube that she's been carrying. And so she locks him in, calls the police, and then goes and you know, keeps an eye on the wife. And at the end, it ends with, you know, the first question precedes knowledge, it precedes ethics, it simply is. Meaning, like, it's just the question. There is no ethics to being the question for her. It's just something that sometimes she has to do. It's kind of baked into who she is. And it ends with her letting out a scream as she takes the mask off, which goes also into the name of the story, which is called The Question and the Scream. So the artist was Christopher Mitten, which as the story goes, there tends to be more depth, but like, you can't just draw the question with no face, right? There's got to be some kind of definition there, so it just doesn't look like a blank, right? And that's my kind of big problem as the action sequences get going is, you know, the layouts are well done. It's just there's not enough detail in here, you know, and it's a little bit too flat. But then this last page, it's got, you know, Gotham with the, you know, the blue and magenta and the green, multiple blimps through the air. There's just like a sense there. So it was a pretty good read for a Montoya story, though. Like, again, Dan Watters and Ram V really working together to establish this side of Gotham, almost in a Gothic sense too. So yeah, but definitely, if you have it, you should go back and maybe check it out when you have some time.
Yeah, then the next backup was an Azrael story. He apparently has been working with a couple of other people, Father Valet and Vengeance, which is a very interesting mix of characters.
Yes. So Father Valet came from Ramby's Catwoman run. Yeah. Right. And then Vengeance was from the Tynan Joker?
Yeah, it was the Joker and Jim Gordon story Vengeance was in. Yeah, very interesting. And they're looking for Venom. It seems like Vengeance is she's basically trying to kick the addiction, or she's suffering withdrawal symptoms, so Valley is trying to help her. And they go after these guys that might have it, but they're basically just zombies at this point. And it's unsuccessful, or at least as at first. Azrael shows up to help them fight, though. And yeah, that's kind of that. It's kind of like what he's up to. It's a very interesting thing. I wonder if those relationships lead anywhere in the future. They might. Yeah. But the big ending, though, is that Azrael's sort of thinking like, oh, something's like missing in Gotham. Something's been taken from the city, and what could that be? And he then looks at his old Batman uniform and says, "Yes, of course." And it's a very good. Like final page, that the art on the Batman outfit that's in like dusty old like moody like closet or whatever it is behind all these cables does look quite good. It's interesting because one of the things we didn't mention too much in the main story is the idea that they're trying to like ruin the symbol of Batman. Like, it's one thing to like break him or break Bruce Wayne, but it's like, no, if you sort of like take away what that symbol means to the city, then the city's for the taking. The city can be shaped in however they want it. So be very interested to see if it's not so much that Azrael is going to be on the team to help save Bruce Wayne. Maybe he's just going to go about being Batman whilst the others are trying to save him. That's entirely possible.
I mean, that's kind of his gig, right? Like, Batman's out of commission. Azrael shows up in the armor. Which I like that this was Dan Watters too, because it continues that Azrael story that we've had. We got Ten-Eyed Man also running around somewhere. So again, these weird sections of Gotham coming together.
And this was Liam Sharp on art, by the way, so it's no surprise that final page looked particularly good. I mean, all of it looked fine, don't get me wrong, it was a solid looking comic, but I felt like the coloring and the inks were especially good in that last page. Yeah.
Well, and that's where it confused me, because it felt like Liam Sharp in parts, but in other parts it didn't. So that last page is very Liam Sharp. The last two pages, in fact, there's a lot of heavy shadow and like that. But in some of the other pages, like Azrael really pops with the red cowl and like the goldish kind of armor, where it didn't feel like Liam Sharp.
Well, it's interesting because he colored it himself, and I agree, it looks a little bit different to what he usually colors. And I wonder if he was intentionally going for a different vibe than he usually does. I can definitely recognize the line work though as Liam Sharp, and I think maybe it may have been a decision to simply make that final page pop in a way where it's like, you know, because everything else is fairly vivid, relatively speaking, and even on that final page, the back of Azrael is the coloring of the rest of the book, but the box that he's looking at, which has got the Batman outfit in it, has got the different coloring. It looks it's very, very different, and maybe that's kind of the point, is that it feels like, oh, we're looking at a completely different level of thing now. So I don't know, for sure. But I really like that. Again, I wasn't expecting an Azrael story in here as one of the backups. No, and I thought I was done, and then I was like, wait, is this another thing after this? And it's only 2 pages, but Dr. Hurt apparently is going to be rearing his ugly head soon. This whole time I'm like, I recognize that little domino mask, and then him talking about summoning and what that means, and we get like a linguistics
lesson about where the word comes from and what it means and how it's something that was put into place. Like a summoning can be something that was put into place ages ago and now is coming to fruition. And I'm like, why does this guy look familiar? And then at the end, when he says, a whole lot of hurt, and you look over, and I was like, oh my God, it's Dr. Hurt from Batman R.I.P. And I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? Is this more seeding for later? Is this, does he have something to do with the organs? But yeah,
I don't know if it's saying these got something to do with the arguments, but he seems to have plans. He seems to think that Bruce Wayne's actually about to die, and if Batman's actually going to die, then whatever concoction he's got brewing is he's going to benefit from that. So yeah, I'm always a bit two-minded on Dr. Hurt as a character. Some of the larger concepts of like him. Like we've got this ancestor of Bruce Wayne who's also called Thomas Wayne, and like there's a lot of Morrison went a bit crazy with Dr. Hurt, and I feel like I'm conflicted. I am very curious about the possibility of what he might be used for in this run.
So yeah, when I think of Dr. Hurt, I think of someone that because in the original story that Morrison based it on, he was a doctor that used this machine to try to replicate Batman, right? And to me, in the hands of Ram V, that's someone that's also been poisoned by the idea of Batman. And because he's not Bruce, and he doesn't have that, love from Alfred that we've seen, to form him, we get somebody like Dr. Hurt, right? From the idea of being, from an idea of a poisoned idea of Batman. And so at least that's what I'm taking from that page, because he's talking about a summoning and something that's a long time coming. So
yeah,
but yeah,
notably this is Ram V that wrote this. He also did the art, actually, funnily enough, but it's only 2 pages.
No, he didn't do the art, did he?
Yeah, story and art, Ram V.
Oh shoot! I just assumed the second name was it's the lettering. I'm not a good reader. Wow, good for Ram V.
Yeah, there you go. Is this our first taste of Ram V art that I can remember?
I think so. Yeah. I think so.
It's very moody. It's very shadowy. I'm trying to think of someone to compare it to. It's got I almost want to say like David Mack a little bit of that.
A little bit. There was an artist that worked on one of the Return of Bruce Wayne books too. Did a lot of Doctor Strange. I'm drawing a blank. It was the Pilgrim Batman issue of the Return of Bruce Wayne. God damn it! I'm gonna have to look.
Yeah, I'm not gonna remember that, Matt.
Yeah, that's who it reminds me of. I'll find it.
Yeah.
Also did a lot of X-Men.
It's certainly not bad though, as Ram V's art. So I'm intrigued by that, but. I think the fact that Ram V wrote this little 2-page at the end himself does suggest to me that that he's got plans for Dr. Hurt to factor into the run. If not during this arc, then certainly maybe whatever arc follows the current one. So interesting to see different people sort of all react to this like potential Batman being hanged, which obviously is not going to happen. At least not completely literal anyway.
At least maybe not Bruce getting hanged, but the idea of Batman, I can definitely see them trying to kill an idea.
Azrael's going to take the hit. He's going to be hanged.
I wouldn't be surprised. He kind of wants to be a martyr.
He's the fall guy.
Yeah. I'm gonna find this Batman. It's just when I put in Pilgrim Batman, all I get is old stories. I'm not getting the one that I want.
Hesitate too long,
but
Matt.
I'll find it.
Rate Detective Comics.
I'm giving this a 9. I really enjoyed this issue.
I don't know if I'll go quite as high as that, but I do really like the main story. I think the backups that I read are interesting, if not necessarily as anywhere nearly as good as the main story. But I think it's probably still a good 8.5 from me on this one. But yeah, very good. Ram V's run continues to bear fruit. So. By
the way, that artist I was trying to think of is Fraser Irving.
Okay, I know that name. Yes.
Yep.
Very good.
So there you go. Found it.
All right, and no one cares anymore. You took too long.
So, well, we were having a discussion. I had to look for it in between words.
Do better, Matt. Do better. It's alright. I know we'll cheer you up. Batman, Catwoman. I'll do that again, Shawn. I need a clean intro for the split up version, Matt.
Yep.
Batman, Catwoman, The Gotham War, Scorched Earth, issue 1, Chip Zdarsky writing, and Tini Howard writing, with Mike Hawthorne and Nikola Čižmešija on...
Čižmešija. I went over how to look up this. It's Čižmešija. So, but yeah, yes. We'll just say that guy.
Is that a guy?
I think so. I think it's Nikolai.
Well, it's Nikola, but I mean, I could see that being a guy's name. But
right.
But you know, Nikola to me, the first thing I think of is a lady. But
right.
I don't know. But I just don't know. You seem so sure is why I asked.
Well, because I believe I looked it up, but now you have me doubting myself.
I mean, I don't know.
So
I made an assumption.
Let's talk about this terrible book, and I'm glad that it's over.
Oh dear. So, yeah, I hate to, be me. So I didn't like the art. I'll just get that out of the way first up.
Yeah. Well, that was established when Hawthorne did the first issue of this, which I forget what it was called.
Battle Lines or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. I'd forgotten what that looked like though. So this was I would say a nasty sounds a bit harsh, but it was an unpleasant surprise when I saw this. Anyway, so it's kind of everything we've been saying. It's the fact that it's not really actually trying to do the concept justice. Instead, it's pivoted to this. So Vandal Savage is up to no good, and the Bat family are all getting involved. The cliffhanger from last time was all the other villains with Batman tech coming down the street, and the big chunk of the first part of the issue is Tim ends up next to them and gets kidnapped by them because he's overpowered, and when they get the call in that something's going on, the Batman, Selina, the Bat family, they all go rushing in to deal with it. Selina and Bruce talk a little bit about the what's going on with Vandal Savage and that he wants the meteor and all that stuff. But they go off, and Jason's left behind because he can't fight anymore because he's every time he gets any adrenaline, the thing kicks in and he gets scared. Yeah. So they go off. Well, at least they go off soon. Batman does a little bit of exploring first, looking for what Vandal's been looking for in the mansion. Goes snooping around. There's this kind of interesting thing where, like, we've been saying, maybe it's Zur-En-Arrh that's responsible for all these really bad decisions Batman's making and why he's acting out of character. But this book kind of goes out of its way to say, where Bruce says, no, it's not Zur-En-Arrh, it's me, I'm making these choices. And then Zur-En-Arrh is also saying in his head, yep, that was you. Which feels to me like it's not trying to be like, Zur-En-Arrh's trying to convince him it's him making these choices. Right. This feels to me that Zdarsky's telling us, no. That's what makes this real and harsh, is that Bruce is making these bad decisions. And I'm like, well, that just... Your get out of jail free card's even been thrown away here. I hate it. I just think Batman's acting out of character.
Like this run even more in hindsight. Like, the more we're learning, the more I can look back and go, okay, so if we're not building to that, what are we building to?
I am in very much negative territory with this at this point. So yeah, the Bat family is fighting the rogues, and action happens. It's potentially fun. The art kind of ruins most of it for me, though, to be honest. Selina's getting a chunk of the meteor off of one of her guys who have betrayed her, are now working for Vandal Savage. But which I guess we should mention that she's sort of being reflective here and realizing that, I taught these guys to be independent, but they've just went back to working for someone, kind of like invalidating a lot of what she was doing at the start of the story.
Yeah. It's they're always going to look out for themselves first, regardless. There's no honor amongst thieves, Yeah. So I do say the one positive is Venomized Professor Pig. That's a look.
Oh, did you enjoy that?
Yeah, that's kind of cool because he's already creepy, and it makes him worse. Give him muscles, You know?
Yeah, so Batman and Selina, because Selina follows the guy with the meteor, Batman's tracked the van that was at his mansion. They all end up at the observatory, which is where Vandal is. But when Batman looks into this, basically it turns out that he wasn't putting the meteor back together because he thought it was going to give him more power. I mean, it probably will, but his main purpose is to use it as a homing beacon for a bigger meteor that's still in space. So now a meteor that'll apparently destroy the entire east coast of the country is coming down to Gotham. So that becomes the new crisis to deal with towards the end of the issue. And we get, seemingly, the sacrifice of Jason Todd. Jason Todd looks over at the Batplane when he hears that this meteor has to be taken out and kamikazes it into the meteor, which at least breaks it up into small enough bits that it doesn't do too much damage. There's like one big bit that craters the observatory, but it's, you know, it could have been worse. So,
yeah.
I mean, look, if this story killed Jason, then that's something.
Yeah, but who's with Bruce as he's looking into the void? There's a hand.
What void? Where are you, Matt?
So after, you know, Selina falls into the pit, right, that's created from the meteor, right? And then a person comes over as Bruce is looking and saying, Selina, I'm so sorry. Or Selina, I'm sorry, And then it looks like Jason right there.
I think it does look like Jason. I think it's just in his head. Was it? I don't know.
I don't think so. Because I was also reading... I read a review of this. I don't very much read comic reviews.
I'll be honest.
I had to make sure that it wasn't just me.
I thought this was Scandal next to him. Now I'm looking at it. It does look like it is Jason, but what tells me that? I mean, is this supposed to tell me that he just like ejected himself out of the plane or something? Like, I don't.
So, well, the reason I asked, because I was wondering how you thought, because I read this initially and I thought, oh, Jason died, but there wasn't enough clamoring online about the death of a character, right? Like, that tends to happen following an issue like this. And so I went and I read a review, and even in the review, like, well, they can't even stick to the death of a character in there because he miraculously survives. And so I went back and I looked through and I was like, yeah, because I thought that was one of the other Bat family, and then you look how he's dressed, and it's clearly Jason.
Like, I'm going to be honest, the art is plain enough that I legitimately just glossed over it and thought it was Scandal, who was already behind them. Yeah, because you know she says
right.
You know, it wasn't supposed to be. And then I thought it was her, and admittedly, it makes more sense that it's Jason now that I'm looking at it and thinking about it, but I legitimately left this issue thinking that he was at least supposed to be dead. Not that I thought it was going to stick. I was sure they were going to find a reason to have him not be dead within a couple of issues, but...
Yeah, but we can't even stick with it without him showing, like, oh no, Jason's fine. You know, kamikaze into a meteor, and he miraculously survives, you know, so...
Well, no, it's not miraculous. It's not miraculous. If he ejected, that's fine. I just don't think that this did a good job of actually showing this moment.
But we don't, because I've looked back over the art, and there's nothing that indicates anything besides it hits him head on.
Well, it
explodes.
It doesn't need to, though. Like, it showing him being okay afterwards is just telling us enough. Really. I mean, it's a bit of a cheat, maybe. You can argue that, but it's not like other stories don't do these like things where it looks like someone dies and then it reveals they're okay afterwards, and you just sort of take it for granted that they got out of the way or whatever. Like, that's not necessarily, it's not a great idea, but it's not a terrible one either.
Yeah, but just with the way that he's going, it is a sacrifice type thing.
My bigger critique here is that because the art is so plain that I just kind of assumed it was someone else and moved on without a second thought. That is the bigger critique here to me.
Huh? Yeah. Well, I thought that's what it was. I thought that he sacrificed himself, right? And then someone comes to comfort Bruce. I'm like, I can't really tell who it is, but that's whatever. Didn't even until I was like, wait, did Jason die? Like a couple days later.
Well, even when you told me this a minute ago, my first thought was, oh, it's in his head. It's not really him. That was my first thought.
Right.
But yeah.
So,
because even afterwards, when Dick's talking to Bruce, he says, you know, like what you've done to Jason. Like, which obviously probably just means what he did to him in terms of the whole like taking away his ability to like fight and stuff. But
yeah.
I read that initially as, oh, you did that and then he get killed. Like that got him killed because he felt he had to prove himself. I don't know. It was all just a bit messy here, and the art here is particularly bad. I thought this scene where it was just Dick and Bruce talking and their civvies was bad, because I think the worst thing about this art is the faces, and because there's no masks and it is just regular people talking, it really doesn't sit well with me. And Bruce basically goes on saying how like it should be Dick and Barbara training up the new generation of like Bat heroes, because he is just going to make people unhappy like him. And Dick's trying to explain that him and Barbara are happy. And he's like, for how long? It's all going to come crashing down eventually. Don't you worry about that. So he's being...
Well, he's like, go ahead.
I was going to say he's been very nihilistic, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say is that he's like, you're only going to be unhappy. If I train people that... I was like, well, no, Bruce, look at us. Like, we're a family. We rely on each other. You did good, you know? But yeah, I'm not liking Zdarsky's Bruce, like, at all.
No.
Like, it's very... And coming from me, I know that doesn't seem to be a lot, but I have zero issues with
it's not
Bruce
just you, though. It's
yeah.
Ever since this run started, his Bruce has been gradually showing the cracks of just being someone I don't like, of not being someone I like. And then on top of all that, the final scene where he goes to... Well, it's not even the final scene, actually. It's a little bit before that. But after all this goes down, right, and they've solved the Vandal Savage thing, and he has his talk with Dick, he goes off to like find another Riddler clue, because Riddler contacted him, and he basically, like, Riddler brings up that there's 3 Jokers, and Batman's like, oh yeah, I already know there's 3 Jokers, and it's like, hey, remember that in Justice League 50? So, I can't argue that technically that is continuity, and technically they're not incorrect for doing it, but when 3 Jokers, the book, actually came out, it kind of felt like, you know what, even though this started in continuity, it kind of feels like it's been jettisoned to being this out of continuity story. So I genuinely never expected it to ever come up again in like main DC. I never thought it was going to come up again. And here we are, and for all places for it to come up, it's coming up in a Batman run where I'm already not liking the characterization of Batman, and I'm not liking a lot of the stories that are happening in it. And now you're doing the 3 Jokers thing?
I want to know what Zdarsky thinks he can add to 3 Jokers. That, you know what I mean? Like, why is that a scab you want to pick? You know? Like, what was in that story that you think is worth telling? Like, is it tying into the whole Joker aspect from that Legacy issue? What was that? What did that end up being? Was that 800?
900.
Where yeah. And they were playing with the idea of, you know, Joker manifesting in different realities. Is that what he's going to play with and tie it back? I don't know, and at this point I don't care. Because I feel like Zdarsky has burned his goodwill with Batman with me, you know?
Admittedly, I do think if you want to try and explain the original reveal that there's 3 Jokers, and you do it in continuity, I think the most acceptable way for me to do it would be to say that 2 of them are just Jokers from another Earth that have spent some time here, but there is only one main Joker that's been here the whole time. Like... That would be like, okay, you know what? That kind of cleans it up without it feeling like, oh, we're doing some crazy thing where there's 3 different guys. But, I mean, given that he's already playing with multiverse stuff, it wouldn't surprise me if Zdarsky does that, if that's what the explanation is. I don't know. Yeah, and then it seems like Selina gives him a thumb drive, although they hide her so much in this page, like in shadows, that I'm not convinced it actually is her. Except for the fact that her narration comes in, which like I thought this was such a weird page, because she's just this little figure up in the roof, and Bruce is like, oh, it's Cat, and he jumps up, right? He goes up to her with a zip line, And I thought, oh, they're hiding her so much, like this has to turn out to be someone else. But then Selina's narration comes in, and I'm like, okay, well, why are you obscuring her so much then? It felt weird to me.
Yeah. I definitely thought that Zdarsky and them were playing off of the whole rooftops, from Tom King and all that type of stuff, because that's where they're meeting up at, and they're, why do you run? It's because you chased me.
Oh yeah,
that's how I took it.
The location is fine, but it's the execution. It's the choice of like how to frame it.
Keeping her in complete shadow.
Yeah, it was like
yeah.
It was just weird. They never showed a one panel where it was clearly her. I don't know. It was very strange. And then the final scene is that one of the criminals who Selina trained in this story is robbing another rich person, and he's like, yeah, this is the way forward. It's better that, Riddler might pay more, but this is safer, and you get a good payday very quickly, blah blah blah. And then he opens a door and he goes, holy crap, Bruce Wayne is Batman. So the twist here to this scene, and this is probably the best scene in the whole issue, because it's actually quite simple and it works for what it is that it's like he's robbing a rich person. Oh, the twist is he's actually robbing Bruce Wayne's apartment, and he's found a bunch of Batman stuff. So I presume he's going to use this in a forthcoming arc, that some random criminal has figured out who Batman is.
Well, there's that, and as we know, people that find out that Bruce is Batman that aren't supposed to know, they're not long for this earth, right? Like what happened to that cop in Detective Comics? Instant. So this guy's living on borrowed time.
True. That was well told, though, so I don't have a problem with that. Yeah.
So this was just like, this is the first thing I read this week just to get it out of the way, and I was like, ugh, I don't want to read anything else right now. It really put a bad taste in my mouth,
It just... So some of the characters, I mean, I guess the one part that's okay is that when Tim gets free of the villains, he basically is able to like direct everyone else to easily defeat them, because he knows like how to like get around all of their powers or technology. It's like, okay, that's a nice little moment for Tim to show that he's very well read. He's studied all these villains. He knows their weaknesses. He's the mental aspect of Batman still, right? He's the heir to the detective aspect.
So him being able to kind of field general them around to defeat these guys using Batman tech they maybe don't quite understand, but yeah, that was okay, I guess. And again, Venomized Professor Pig, that's a cool look.
My problem is that all these villains just felt shoehorned in here. There was one small scene a couple of issues ago setting up that they were at a meeting, and then last issue it's like, here, I'm going to set you loose on the city, here's all this bat tech. Again, this was supposed to be a storyline that was going to put the ideals of Batman against someone who was offering an alternative that actually seemed like a good idea, but just one that he didn't agree with, and maybe explore the debate there, right? That, like, I can see a really good ideological debate storyline about what it was supposed to be. Instead, it was a lot of out-of-character nonsense for the first couple of issues, and then, it's actually about Vandal Savage and a giant meteor. Also here's like 6 other Batman rogues who are just going to fight the Bat family in the background for the final issue. It's so much of it feels like just time wasting to me. I don't know. I don't hate those ideas in a vacuum. I don't know why they needed to be in the same story. No, I don't understand why Vandal Savage coming in and taking control of Wayne Manor during this time. Like, why they thought that was a good idea to get away from the Batman Catwoman thing, because that's what the Gotham War was supposed to be to me, not Batman rogues wearing bat gear. The only thematic link I can think of with the whole Vandal Savage thing is that Vandal Savage is maybe losing his power because it's been so long since the meteor originally first came down, that he's trying desperately to cling and still be who he thinks he's supposed to be, and maybe that ties into Batman trying to still be who he is supposed to be. But I think the problem with that is that I feel like the story of Batman starting to struggle has been more in Detective Comics, so I don't even know if that's as relevant to what Zdarsky's been doing. I mean, it's definitely came up. It's definitely came up that he's not as spry as he used to be. But
shoot, what I didn't think about in Detective Comics? I don't know how Bruce is going to get out of the organ thing. He has that robot hand. Robot Hand will save him.
I hope the robot hand doesn't come up in Detective. As far as I'm concerned, that's already not canon.
Yeah, I know. The look on your face when I brought up Robot Hand, you look very angry.
I just.
God, this run has been like, I'm shocked with how much it's swan dived. Like, because because Batman stuff early on in this run, him, during the failsafe stuff, that's whatever. This is just not even like good to read, Nah,
this has been a rough crossover. None of us were looking forward to it. It did not look good, but it is basically lived up to the expectations, but maybe not in the ways that we thought it would. It kind of surprised. Like, I thought it was just going to be mediocre and like the characters were going to feel a bit off.
Yeah.
We got that, but we also got, it's actually about all this other stuff instead, and none of that was that interesting either. So, all right, what are you rating? Whatever this is called.
I'm giving this a 3.
Matt, on your scale, that's like a -2. That's pretty dire.
Yeah, that's how much I didn't like it.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you. I'll go with a. I'll go with a. I'll just agree with the 3. I was tempted to go as high as a 4, but I'll. You know what? I don't want to be the one who's positive.
Like the art in the last couple pages, I think that's the Čižmešija art, because it does. There's a stark difference, but that wasn't enough for me to give it a 4. The Hawthorne art just wasn't working.
Yeah, I didn't like the Hawthorne art at all. Don't like the story. Didn't like the characterization of these characters. I was flat out confused by a death. Apparently, I didn't even realize I was confused by that until we started talking about it, and you were like, "Hey, isn't that Jason still alive?" I was like, "Oh, I guess it is."
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. That's Batman, Catwoman, Gotham War, Scorched Earth, issue 1. That was the name of it. I had to check because I didn't remember. All right. Supergirl Special issue 1. Mariko Tamaki writing and Skylar Patridge on the art. So this is kind of exciting because this is Tamaki returning to Supergirl. She did the Being Super miniseries way back in the early days of Rebirth. One of the best books of that year when it came out. And that was a very much out of continuity, kind of like different take on Supergirl. This is her writing Supergirl in present day DC continuity, and that's kind of cool to see what she would do with that. So I'm hoping this is maybe a test to see if we should maybe get more with her doing Supergirl. I'd be kind of all game for that.
I hope so, because if this team, if Tamaki and Patridge are doing a Supergirl book, I'm going to be there for sure.
I was pretty into this. I think the art style works very well with Tamaki's very laid-back approach, and what I mean by that is that Tamaki tends to be a very quick read because she does not overstuff speech bubbles, she does not overstuff narration. It flows very well and quickly. So despite the fact that this was another 40-page, annual size book, I was through this in no time. It went by.
It read very quick, and I went back and got to look at the action scenes again, because as you're going through, just to really take them in, and that's why I wanted to shout out the artist too, because Patridge, it feels like, it does feel like being super without being, I'm drawing a blank on the artist.
Joelle Jones?
That did Being Super. Joelle Jones, thank you. Yeah. It feels very reminiscent of Joelle Jones. The inks aren't as heavy, right? And the lines aren't as angular, but it feels in the same family of art. And so to really, keep that kind of vibe from Being Super going.
Actually, just to go with something I was saying earlier, I was complaining about the flat art and that backup in Detective. This is also a very flat style, but flat in general is not a critique. It's just that certain styles, the way they do it, because the faces here are very flat. There's no shadowing, and there's detail in the eyes and the nose and the mouth, but there's not a lot of some artists will do a lot of shading and lines to represent the cheekbones and how the face is screwing up. This isn't doing that, but it works very well because it has this kind of more, I don't even know what to say. There's more of a kind of a pretty quality to it, I guess. Where you've got Supergirl hanging out with the Super Twins, And it sets up this idea that at least the media are trying to spin that there's a rivalry between her and Power Girl. With it's like, oh, battle of the super blondes.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that Kara's been kind of up in her head the last couple times that we've seen her, right?
Yeah.
So just the fact that, you know, she seems very distant isn't helping her cause that she doesn't like Paige. So yeah, I like that's where it started off.
Yeah, they're going through a whole media thing where they're trying to really play up this rivalry, and you can see that she's kind of distanced. Like, you know, we get this great scene where she's with the rest of the super family, and they're all grabbing food and debating what to watch while they're eating, and she's just kind of sitting there in the middle, and the panels are going in closer to her, like she's just sort of like, you know, in a trance. Like everyone else is moving around her, and she's not really engaged. It's actually John who tries talking to her and shows her the thing that Clark made for the twins. So it's very much in continuity. Yeah. But you know, this doohickey, and you know, this makes her go kind of quiet as well. And John's asking her about what she was talking to the kids about, and she's like, "Oh, they were asking me, you know, what it was like on Krypton." And he's like, "Okay, what did you say?" And she's like, "You know, I don't really know. Like, I remember what it looked like. I remember like, but it kind of has this. It almost feels like she's got like a imposter syndrome a little bit, right? And that would also tie into the fact that there's a second type of Supergirl kicking about that would add to this idea of imposter syndrome. But even on Krypton, as we get in these flashbacks as she's thinking about them, is that, you know, she was in these races. She ran track, and it shows that she was very, very good. She was out ahead. But as we see later on, she did not win the race. This other girl named Elsa was able to sneak out a victory. And it gets to this idea where she feels like she's got this insecurity that she always, whenever she wants to try really hard to be the best, she always stumbles and fails. And this happens, of course, in the present day stuff when they're out saving people. There's a big fire, this building is going to collapse, and all the supers are flying about doing stuff. And she goes up to catch this part of the building that's falling. There's someone screaming on the roof. And Power Girl sort of flies up as well and sort of zooms past, saying she's got this. And Kara actually grabs her foot, says, "No, I've got this instead." Now, don't get me wrong. I do think Power Girl's been a bit of a shithead for saying, "No, I'll get it," like flying past her. That's a bit weird. Although, maybe it does indicate that Kara's not flying as fast as she normally would. Maybe she's a little off.
So I took this more as because she doesn't really see the big chunk coming down, right? Kara is so distracted about quote unquote winning with Power Girl that she just speeds off. And to me, Paige was going to get the big chunk to free up Kara to get to the roof, right? But because of what Tamaki's telling us about Kara not thinking, and, you know, she gets up in her head too much, and every time she tries too hard, she stumbles. This is where it really pays off. And so it just shows that she's at fault for her own actions here, which I thought is told really, really well, because the pacing here on this page where they have the diagonal lines cut in there.
Yeah. No, honestly, now I'm reading the rest of the page, I think you're right. I think Power Girl was going specifically for the big slab of concrete that was coming down. Because the way because it's not even like she notices it afterwards. She just says, you know, "What are you doing? Look above you." And then so Kara just missed something effectively, and you know, it falls on her, and the other supers have to come in and help her, and she feels let down. And that's when we get the end of the flashback where she finally lost the race, but specifically lost because she tripped right before the finish line. So, you know, it really sets up that she's feeling down about all this stuff, and, you know, she goes home, and Lois shows up with some cupcakes to try and cheer her up, and you know, trying to help her. And I think what I liked about this is that it felt like from the start of the issue, it's like, okay, Kara's going through something, and the issue's got a purpose to it, and it's to address that she is depressed, and that's what Lois says, like, cupcakes help with depression, and she's like, wait, am I depressed? And she's like, are you? Like,
are you?
You know, she's been very kind of, you know, gentle about how she approaches it, but and then we see that Kara's an absolute maniac and eats cupcakes by taking one, turning it upside down, and putting it on top of the other cupcake. So the icing smushes together.
Okay, so I thought, no, this is 2 cupcakes.
Yes.
Because I thought she was taking, because there's this internet hack, right, where you're supposed to eat cupcakes by opening it up, ripping off the bottom, right, and sandwiching them together like that. And that's what I thought she was doing. But now that I look at the art, no, that is 2 cupcakes.
I mean, if that's meant to be the bottom half of that cupcake, that was a very tall cupcake.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right now. But I you know, shortcut wise, I'm like, oh, she's doing the whole rip the cupcake, which I've never seen anybody eat a cupcake like that. So, you know, more power to you. I tend not to eat cupcakes.
No, to be fair, later on, Power Girl does it that way. She rips the bottom half of the cupcake off.
But I took that as it's because they're both Kara, right? They're similar, and despite being different, right? And that's the Kara way to do it, you know. That's all I took that as. But you're right, like a maniac, that's how she eats cupcakes.
You know, now I'm looking at it, I think it is one ripped in half. It's just really tall.
Yeah, see? But the
look at
art here...
the
art here, though, it looks like she's still unwrapping this one cupcake.
Yeah.
In
my defense, I've never heard of this stupid thing. Why do people do this?
So it's to try to contain the icing more than anything. You essentially end up making a cupcake sandwich type deal.
This is complete news to me. So it never occurred to me she was ripping it in half.
Google how to eat a cupcake, and you'll see. Okay,
very weird. All right.
It is.
Okay.
Anyways,
weird thing to miss, but all right.
I also want to address too. You kind of breeze by it where Kara and Paige are talking, and she goes, "You know, I'm not your therapist," or no, she says, "I don't need another therapy session, thanks." And he says, "Good, I'm not your therapist," playing into the whole, you know, Power Girl mini. But she also says, "I saw that place you go to escape. I know that place just as well as you do, Kara. That place that you go, it's not real," right? So it's also, again, Tamaki really stating the fact, like, yes, they are more similar than they are different, you know, and that because in the Power Girl book that I've been reading, right, Paige feels very much the same as Kara is here, right? She kind of feels what's her purpose and where does she fit in the family, right? So just the fact here that both of them are so up in their head, they don't realize that they can kind of rely on each other, right? And so I like that that's being addressed here.
Yeah. You know, I'm still obsessing over the dimensions of this cupcake. See if you compare it to the page before. The bottom half of it still looks just as tall as it was when it was full. So
yes.
Yeah,
Pete. Again, I don't like to say this that often, but you were right, right? Because it does look like 2 cupcakes. Right?
It does. It looks like 2 cupcakes. Look, I've never heard of this splitting in half, so it never even occurred to me that she was doing that, right? It was more clear in the later page when Karen does it, because you can see the tear.
Mm-hmm.
The detail's slightly there if you're looking closely for it, but because I've never heard of this practice, it never even occurred to me. But yeah, I knew I wasn't crazy. But yes, fair enough. She rips the cupcake in half, which is still weird to me, for the record. But so she starts talking about you know, okay, like she feels like she's always too late for things and she always fumbles. And it kind of wraps back into her origin story, but in a kind of an interesting way, because it's not just, oh, you know, I'm still sad because I left Krypton and Krypton's dead. Because, you know, Supergirl stories often play with that because, yeah, she remembers it and it's a fair thing to do. But, you know, we've done it a lot. What I thought was interesting here is that this is more about the fact that she was supposed to get here and look after Clark, but now that she's starting to feel like she's failed at a lot of things and that she's always like showing up late, this is literally the biggest example of her showing up late to something. Mm-hmm. She was meant to come and protect her baby cousin, and she arrived and he was, you know, 30 or whatever age he was.
Yeah.
So like this, the idea that that's just like this big, huge, gaping example of something she, you know, and that may have even gave her this complex in the first place, where she's, you know, now constantly worried about being late. In that sense,
it definitely reinforced that, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah. And Lois gives her some advice. She says, hey, like, Clark didn't need you to be this guardian, right? You showed up when you did and became the thing you needed to be. And just says Supergirl, and there's like, a shot of her symbol at the bottom of the page. But yeah, they hug goodbye. Power Girl shows up and says, "Will you offer me a cupcake?" And Kara says, "You can have one of the vanilla ones." And Karen says, "Rude." Now, right. So I have two minor nitpicks in the art. Then I think the art looks very nice, but one is Cupcake Gate, which we've already talked about and established. The second part here, which I guess is also Cupcake Gate, is that she says you can have one of the vanilla ones. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to go back to the previous page, right? They're all the same color. There is no indication in the colors that there are more than one flavor of cupcake here.
No. And it's not like they even colored them to make the icing different colors. So you could hypothetically say, oh, well, the white ones are vanilla and the pink ones are strawberry, right?
Yeah, that would be fine. Like, that would be fine, yeah.
They are the same.
It's all it needs. But they all look the same color.
Yeah. I thought the same thing, too. As I was like, wait, so this is supposed to be a dig that you can't have one of the good ones. You get one of the vanilla, the plain. It's like, they all look plain. So, and it's not like she was making a wry joke, right? It's, Paige follows up with rude.
Yeah.
So.
Which, and for the record, vanilla gets a bad rap. Like, good vanilla is very tasty. Okay? It simply is.
Yeah.
People look at it as the plain one, and it's like, no. If you get good vanilla ice cream, it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it can help accent things too, right? Like, I don't want chocolate in my sundae, right? Chocolate ice cream, it's going to be too rich and there's too much other things going on. Vanilla's a nice base for that type of stuff. Like, I'll take a chocolate milkshake. That's a little bit different. But yeah, no, vanilla. But when it comes to cupcakes and stuff too, vanilla is kind of plain. It is kind of the last picked, if you will.
I think you have vanilla with like just a light bit of chocolate sprinkle. Just a little accent of a flavor on top of it, as opposed to, an intense thing. Kind of like a chocolate chip cookie versus a double chocolate chip cookie. I typically prefer the regular chocolate chip cookie because I feel like just a hint of chocolate is nicer than just everything's ultra chocolatey the entire time.
The full.
Yeah. Anywho,
the death by chocolate.
We're getting into another debate. So yeah.
So when they get in here, right? Paige is like, hey, do you want to know what the security guard said when I saved him? When I put him in the ambulance, and Kara, of course, wants to know. And she goes, thanks, Supergirl. You're my favorite. Right? So even in this whole idea that they're supposed to, the media is pitting them against each other, the people that they're saving aren't noticing, right? They just see a blonde super family member and assume that it's Supergirl.
If anything, this was probably...
They both have a good laugh about that.
This should give Power Girl a complex that she's just going to be constantly mistaken for Supergirl.
And I think that's what Tamaki's talking about is like, look, we're all on the same team here, right? So, if I'm going to be mistaken for you, that's not bad because you're Supergirl. That's how I took it here because they have a laugh about this, because, and she says, why is it so funny? And Paige goes, well, being a hero is not easy and sometimes you have to laugh about things, so it really just kind of drives that home that they're on the same team. At the end of the day, they shouldn't be competing with one another. They should be supporting one another. And I liked overall that message of this book here, with these two especially.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically it just ends with them shaking hands and Paige says, you're my favorite too. And Kara says, don't tell John, which... is I don't know, funny.
I like these personal dynamics in the super family. Seeing the super twins in the beginning just be their preteen rambunctious selves, right? Kind of setting Kara off on this head trip just by asking questions.
Well, I think it's interesting because it implies that John would feel slighted that he's not Power Girl's favorite. Oh, it's just interesting to me. Because John has never really been presented that way before.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not, and I'm not saying it's a problem. It's not presented as a serious thing. They're just kind of joking around when they say it, so it's not a big deal. But they've never really presented John that way before, so I just thought it was interesting to sort of put that little sort of slightly vain tidbit in about John, that he would be a little miffed per se if that ever came up.
And he has friends with Damian, right? So maybe some of that rubbed off on him. He assumes he's everybody's favorite super family member. He is the son of Superman, like biological. So
I mean,
but no, this was a nice, light, fun read. Like I would like a Supergirl book on the stands. I know we have Power Girl right now, but if this was like a test for Tamaki and Patridge to do an ongoing or at least a mini, I hope enough people saw it.
I liked it quite a bit. I think Tamaki's just got such a good voice for Supergirl, and I like that immediately it feels like it's got something to say. It's Supergirl's going through something and she wants to actually explore what that is. And I love as well that it ties into this idea of the media pitting two women against each other, because it's something the media does all the time. Everything has to be a rivalry. Everything has to be, if there's two women in a group, then they must hate each other, they must fight each other, they must be whatever. And I love that she's playing on that misogyny by actually having it sort of happen to Supergirl and Power Girl and do something with it. So I like that. I like also the idea that Kara has a bit of a complex about not being as good as she's supposed to be, because she feels that she's lost in little ways, like losing a race in her childhood, but even in bigger sense, being here late for Clark when she was supposed to take care of him. And then making a fumble in the field because she is depressed. And I think this tackling the idea that one of the super family is kind of depressed, when it's not like they're a moody character, like, this is not like someone who's in the Bat family where you might understand why they're in gloomy Gotham all the time. I like that this is dealing with a character who has got a good environment around him, who doesn't necessarily have an obvious reason to be depressed, because the truth is that anyone in any position can be depressed, and tackling a character like this being depressed, I think, is a positive message. So I like all that stuff, and it's good.
Yeah, and on top of it, it feels like she has that kind of young person, what am I going to do with my life kind of vibe too, and that's also what might be kind of making that feeling of depression worse, because she kind of feels aimless. Right, she doesn't know what her spot in the world is. So it's nice that Lois, who not quite a mother figure, but let's say big sister type, is the one to reach out to her and be like, "Hey, you seem off. Let's just have a talk. Here, I brought cupcakes." So I like that dynamic coming into play here too. That even someone in the super family needs someone to talk to. So, but yeah, it's a very, very fun book.
Yeah, no. It's always interesting as well, just having Kara and Lois have some kind of relationship. Even seeing John and Kara have talking a little bit is not something we see that often. So it's fine. And yeah, I want a Supergirl book. I would love Tamaki to be the one writing that Supergirl book. I know there's a Power Girl book, but I didn't really care about it. Partly because I don't really care about Power Girl that much, if I'm completely honest. Yeah. So, but we'll see. What are you rating Supergirl Special Issue 1?
I'm going to give this an 8.5.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it the 8.5 as well. So, there you go. That is Supergirl Special Issue 1. City Boy Issue 5. Greg Pak and Mike Choi on art. This is from a couple of weeks ago, but we had a busy week then and a quiet week now, so we're doing it now. So that's what's happening. So the cliffhanger of the last issue was that Swamp Thing was about to enter the story.
Yeah, make his presence known.
And sure enough, that is indeed what happens. There's basically this idea. We get a little bit of a flashback to start with his mother not being very good with him. But City Boy is out. He's left the city. He's out in a forest or wherever, trying to be away from cities because he doesn't want to affect any more cities. He doesn't want to, create this city that Darkseid wants. So he thinks, I'll get away from any city. I'll go out in the wilderness, into the rural areas, and I'll just stay there. And then what he discovers, whilst he's sort of basically kind of having a bit of a panic attack as he's trying to control his powers.
It starts off as him trying. Go ahead.
Is the delayed Skype worse today or something? I feel like you keep stopping and starting.
There's a half step today for whatever reason.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many sentences where I stop to let you talk, and then there's like an extra pause as I'm waiting. Like, all right, Matt, come on, like.
Yeah. So that's why, and then I go to talk, and you're talking still, and then I feel bad.
Anywho, so basically, what happens is that City Boy starts manipulating an anthill. It's like the city of ants still counts, right? It's not just a human city. It's this city that's created by animals. And it actually ends up creating a giant ant out of the sand hill, right? So it's like, okay, so this can even happen with that. And of course, it's Swamp Thing who comes in and kind of puts a stop to it. I mean, he gets stabbed at first, to be fair, but he's Swamp Thing, so it's fine. It's not a big deal. But basically, Swamp Thing's coming to see if, like, City Boy needs to be taken out. Like, you know, you might destroy the Parliament of Trees, you might destroy everything with these powers. And I love that he brings up the Parliament of Gears. He brings up, you know, metal and the machines and all that, and says, you know, I've encountered these things before, but you don't really fit into that because you affect both natural and unnatural cities. You affect man-made cities, but you also affect, you know, an ant city. So it's different than the idea of, like, it's almost like the idea that he's manipulating or giving form is one that is created by a group in terms of them creating a society, as opposed to the physical structure. Even though he's manipulating literally the physical structures when he makes the objects and things, it's less about that makes it a city and more about the community that makes it a city. But it ends up being a bit of a therapy session with Swamp Thing, kind of like, okay, I can tell you don't actually want to cause damage. Like, that's because at first he's like, I have to stop you, but then it's like clear, no, you actually don't want to, like, harm anyone. You don't want to create cities. You're trying to avoid it. So let's talk about this, because I can control the green, and, you know, maybe he can help him.
But I was gonna say, him sitting out there, it says he's like 7 miles from Bloodhaven, right? And it's this moment that he's trying to find peace, and even in that trying to find peace, it causes him panic. Right, because he's up in his head. He's having these memories of his mom, right? And it's not what he thought it was. You know, she's yelling at him and all this other stuff. And then he starts to realize, like, well, is it me? Am I bad? Am I why this power is coming out this way? You know, and that's what makes him realize about the anthill and him being able to, you know, touch that city.
That's the emotional hook of the issue, is that he's been trying to, like, convince himself that he's not bad, because he once heard the idea that, you know, people aren't bad, they just make bad decisions, or they've done some bad things, but it doesn't make them bad. And he wants to believe that because he has this, you know, this idea that he is bad. And this all comes together at the end, because when he does let the emotions get the better of him and the city starts to form, and it seems like the apocalyptic city that might be built is starting to form, and the intergang scientist is saying, yes, be bad, be the person I know you are, create the city. It's almost like, oh, it's coming to pass. And the reason why this all happens, of course, is because Swamp Thing tries to help him with finding out where his mum is. Basically, he's like, hey, you know, touch grass is literally what he says, which was him making a joke. But he shows him using the green to find out what happened to his mum. And it didn't look good last time, because it felt like, wait a minute, this is when the nuke went off in Bloodhaven, so, you know, it might not be a happy ending here. And sure enough, they find out that the mum and her new, like, husband and child were out in this wooded area waiting out whatever was going on at the time. And they did in fact die when the nuke went off, and there's like a memorial, like not a tombstone, but like just like a memorial plaque out here in the forest. And this is like a shock, and it's like it has a kind of interesting direction to take this in, is that now he can never have the confrontation with her. He can never really have the answers that he wanted to ask. He has to just kind of live with this. It feels like kind of a ballsy move to not give the character that closure. and I think it's interesting. But obviously, in terms of the immediate plot, it makes him very emotional, and that's what starts to manipulate everything, where all of a sudden the nearby structures start to all form together, and the edge of the forest and the roads all start to kind of come together to become something. And it just ends with Intergang scientists sort of looking on and being like, yes, Cameron, yes, my good boy. So I think what I've been impressed about with this book is that, you know, it was a lot to take in for that first issue or two, as it was setting up like what the characters' like powers were and how they worked and whatnot. I think it has gotten better as it's went along, because these last two issues I feel like have been really honed in to what the character's emotional journey is, and the idea that he's fighting these like emotions. I think ultimately the lesson, or what I expect to happen by the end of his story, would be that he learns to control it and uses it when he wants to for good, but doesn't let it overcome him. It's more something he is able to actually keep in check. But we'll see.
Yeah, because a lot of his trauma seems to come around the mom, and now that he knows, like, because this whole thing that, you know, he says is he's losing control of his emotions, is like, it can't end like this. I have so many questions, right? And that's, you know, it's just something he's going to have to learn how to deal with. And so that is, like you said, that is kind of a ballsy choice here for this new character that, you know, that we don't know too much about. Is, you know, there's always places that we can inform this, right? It is comics. We can, you know, get around it. But the idea for Pac to have, like, this guy won't get closure, at least not yet. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you know, it's a bold move. On the art, obviously Choi's art's been pretty consistent, but I did especially like when Swamp Thing sort of takes him into the green, and we get just kind of the green kind of lines of like connecting to like the buildings and the leaf coming out of the brick wall and stuff like that. I thought that looked really cool. And then, of course, there's that panel where the nuclear bomb's going off behind them. It's very different. Gives it a nice different look. It actually kind of looks like it might even be a slightly different artist, or at least different coloring on those pages.
Yeah.
Because the face is shaded very differently, I think.
Yeah. There's almost... Yeah, there's... We said flat a lot on this issue, but this is a very flat coloring style. Yeah. So maybe it's just the coloring that's different.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see. Wait a minute. Oh, okay, interesting actually. So there is two artists. So it's Minkayu Zhang, and then it says underneath Mike Choi, artist of the In the Green sequence. That's interesting because normally it says pages so and so to so and so, but it's actually titled the sequence here instead. Forgive me, I was going off League of Comic Geeks, which just told me the one name, but fair enough. So yeah, that's a different artist. That's fair. In that case, cool. I keep the praise that I gave, but I'll also praise Young for the consistent art elsewhere.
Yes.
Because, you know, there's a lot of fun, because, you know, when Swamp Thing's like taking on the big ant, that's kind of fun. There's a lot of detail in Swamp Thing. You know, that full page spread where Swamp Thing sort of like grabbed City Boy with a vine and he sort of got him upside down. There's a lot of detail in some of these big pages, so it's not low effort at all.
No. Well, and I like the differences in the Swamp Things, right? So in the green, he's got a more kind of woodsy appearance, almost like in almost in Rambee's Swamp Thing, versus outside in the regular, he's a lot more bushy and kind of mossier. So I do like the distinction in the art for Swamp Thing here, which is nice. But yeah, man, this is just, with each issue, his origin, not even his origin, his whole vibe becomes more and more tragic. And my heart really goes out for this kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess because I guess it's meant to give you the vibe of someone who's kind of like, if a kid's abandoned and homeless, he's kind of left to the streets, which is the city. So it's the idea that City Boy is this like abandoned child is kind of perfect in a way, but obviously it's a very sad story. But hey, what are you rating City Boy issue 5?
I'm gonna give this a solid 7.
I'll go as high as the 8. I thought it was really good.
There you go. Right.
I thought it was good. So there you go. All right, that'll take me on to a Patreon book. Every month at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, you can go to one of the higher tiers and make myself or Connor read a book of your choosing. So I am looking at American Vampire Second Cycle Issue 1. So we're finally on to this phase of the story. There's a flashback to kick it off in 1811, which sets up, there's like a tribe on the Mexican territory of Arizona, which they're waiting for like a scout to come back, and like this horse comes back headless, and the only thing on it is like a bag with the head of the guy they're waiting for. So and the head starts talking to them, so it's all ultra super horror movie stuff. But yeah, it looks like there's like flying vampire like bats. The art's very kind of like, there's just like shadows in the sky, but there's like one panel of what looks like almost like predator cloaking tech, like bat arms coming down and grabbing someone. So full on stuff. So I think there's what they're setting up here, because it comes up later in the issue, is like a very old species of vampire, because obviously we've got all the different species in this book, between the American, the Carpathian, and all that stuff. So the main gist of the book, though, is that it's 1965, and we're introduced to a young girl who's running from like basically a lynch mob who are chasing her, and she ends up in this farm, and full page spread out to sort of protect her is Pearl, although she's been going by Henrietta now, Henrietta Jones, and she's claiming to be the daughter of Pearl, because she's went back to Kansas where she's from, and she's like, yeah, Pearl was my mom and I'm Henrietta. And one of the guys here who's quite old even comments that she looks exactly like her mom used to. And it's just like, yeah,
Henrietta Jones Jr.
Yeah, a little bit of that going on. So she basically wards them off, and I was wondering, like, okay, why are they hunting this girl exactly? And a couple of theories were going in my head, and the art here is gorgeous, by the way. All the orange is behind her. There's a scarecrow in the background. It's really good Halloween vibes, actually, from this stuff. But it's because the little girl's a vampire, and what Pearl seems to be doing now is taking in like innocent good vampires who are being hunted, and they're scared because she's a good vampire, so it stands to reason there's other good vampires, ones that don't want to kill people and so on. So that seems to be what she's doing now. Meanwhile, at the Texas and Mexico border, Skinner Sweet is taking down like smugglers who are driving products between the border. He's coming up on his motorbike and just like killing the shit out of these guys who are driving a truck. In fact, he set up a ramp in the road so the truck will crash up into a bridge or whatever it is that's going over the road. And it's a really big sequence. Like the art here from Albuquerque is fantastic. Like, all the stuff with Pearl and the little girl before in the field with the scarecrow was like Halloween vibes. This is like Skinner's on a motorbike, the guys in the truck are throwing out grenades at him, and then there's this big crash at the end. It feels like a big Hollywood action movie scene. Very, very over the top and big in all the best ways. And Skinner Skinner kills one guy, he's about to kill the other, and the other's like begging, hey, I'll tell you about another shipment that's even more valuable. It's not guns, like, because I think this truck's full of weapons. It's not even guns, it's something else, it's something more different. And he's like, okay, fine, tell me. I assume he still kills him after he tells him, because he's Skinner Sweet. Like, I'm not expecting him to like just let him go. But we get Pearl, and this is actually quite interesting, is that both Pearl and Skinner, over a couple of different two-page spreads, kind of recap their backstories a bit, and I think this is a genuine attempt to think that because this was relaunching as a new #1, it was American Vampire Second Cycle, that there might actually be new people trying it. The name Second Cycle would make me think people wouldn't, but they at least went out of their way here to give like recaps of like Pearl's backstory and who Skinner is, explain that he's an American vampire and he's got different weaknesses, that Pearl's the same. They kind of go through that, and it's framed around her telling this young girl, or not even telling her, like I think the girl's asking these questions, and then Pearl in her narration kind of says, what am I meant to tell her this, and then like says all the truth to us, but isn't maybe necessarily giving her all the details. But yeah, she takes her into this basement area where she's got like 3 other vampires, where another one who's a kid, one who's a teenager, and one who's like a guy, and they're sort of getting to know each other. I have to let a cat out, Matt, so vamp for a second.
Gotcha, vamp in a vamp book. Yeah, so Pete let me know who's reading this today, and I haven't been to the shop in a couple weeks. I've been reading everything digitally. So, you know, I think by next month I'll be able to join him in on this one.
Good vamping, Matt. Good vamping.
All right, I vamped.
So, usually I'll just wait until Matt's saying something, but that wasn't going to happen at any time soon, given he didn't read this book.
No, not on this book.
So, yeah, basically all these like characters who are here, they're all very friendly, that are living with Pearl, and they kind of establish that they're all different species of vampire. Like, one's kind of a mongrel, one's a different kind, and they're all showing off their different teeth. And Pearl's like trying to deduce what species this new girl is. It's like, okay, you know, what is she? And she's got like a family or like a species tree drawn out on the floor later on in the issue. And she's basically thinking that you might actually be the oldest species of vampire that I've ever encountered. And I think that's what the opening flashback in 1811 was kind of setting up, is that she's one of these species. Which doesn't necessarily mean she's going to be bad, but it's just setting up that she comes from this line and that's going to be relevant later on in some way.
Much older lineage.
Meaning she might sprout wings and start flying around if that flashback's anything to go by. Skinner has got a hideout. Him and his old buddies back in the Wild West days actually had a train car like underground in the desert, and that's where he's been living. And he goes in and he's got this like skeleton that's there that he talks to. What's he call her? He calls her Kitty. And he's like, "Do you miss me, Kitty?" And this is where he explains a lot of his backstory for possible new readers that might have been picking this up because it's an issue 1. Yeah. So it serves as a pretty reasonable recap of all this stuff. But the other big tease with the new girl is that when Pearl goes to put her hand on her shoulder at one point, the girl kind of like flinches in pain, and she's like, "Wait, why are you sore?" And she pulls down the back of the girl's shirt, and it reveals the bite mark that turned her, and it's huge. Like, it's like covering her entire, like almost the entire back curve of her shoulder, and it's very, very, very big. And she's like freaked out and kind of like, you know, is really surprised by this. And she's like, you know, who bit you? Where did you get bit? Like, when did this happen? And the girl says, it's you know, it's not a kind of vampire, it's just him. It's just the one before that. And she's like, who are you talking about? And the girl says, the Grey Trader. So this first issue is really all building up to the reveal of this new villain that's coming into the story, and that is the Grey Trader. And the art here is phenomenal. Because the girl's looking away, and the panels above this. So it's like 3 panels. There's like a panel at the top, and it's Pearl's reaction to what she's seeing on the shoulder, and then it's a shot looking at the backs of both of them as they're having most of this conversation. But the big panel at the bottom of the page is the girl looking over her shoulder as she says the name, the Grey Trader. And it's really effective because, one, the way the art's done with the eyes, she looks terrified, so that's great. But the fact that it sort of built up to her like face being shown again and the name being given in this big dramatic moment, even without the bold lettering and even without the dialogue that builds up to it, it tells you that this is a really big deal. This is the first mention of like this new important character who's going to be a big thing. The anthology might have teased the Grey Trader, I can't remember, but either way, like, this was a very effective build up to revealing that, oh hey, we've got this new big bad coming, and Pearl's already got maybe a hand in the story now because she's looking after this girl, this victim of his. The final scene of the book, though, is Skinner waiting to ambush this other cargo that he was told about at the border, and he's got like a car set up in the road to make the truck stop. But when he gets down to see what it is, it actually turns out to be a school bus, and he goes on and starts demanding where the loot is. He's like, "Where's the loot?" And there's all these scared kids who are just like asking for help. They don't know what's going on. And then these two big hands come in the window and pull the kids out of the bus. Not all of them, because there's like a full bus full of them, but two of the kids get pulled out the windows. And Skinner looks out the window and says, "Show yourself, who are you?" And there's this gorgeous panel of the school bus levitating in the air. It's in the air as the rain's pouring down, and there's several of these vampire, flying vampire bat-like creatures. Again, there's no detail though. They're all kind of like in silhouette and obscured by the rain and the coloring. Like they're intentionally not showing you what they actually look like, other than just the vague shape of them. But there's several of them flying around above the bus, and then the panel at the bottom of the page is this man in a grey suit and hat looking up, presumably the Grey Trader. So it begs this thing where there is clearly a lot of other creatures that are flying up there that are associated with him. Does he control all of these vampires? And if so, why? Is it just because he's the king of their kind? Is he exactly one of their kind, or is he something different? I don't know. But the idea that this bus was referred to as cargo, and that this was like, like basically a bus of kids. Like, do they only feed in children? And that's kind of, because so far all we know is that this new girl that's with Pearl is a victim, and then we've got a bus full of kids that are now the new victims. So do these people, these vampires prefer kids? Do they only feed on kids? Like, what is the rules here? But as far as the suspense and building up the atmosphere until it revealed, key bit, like, I think every scene in this issue, it felt very refreshing. It felt like a nice new start, a nice new era for American Vampire, because it was like, hey, we're in a new time period. We're now establishing Pearl in a post-Henry world where he's already gone, and she's doing this new thing where she's being proactive and trying to help other vampires who deserve help. And that's all great. But the mood of that stuff in the field with the Scarecrow, all the stuff with Skinner doing the action movie stuff, and then the build up to the Grey Trader himself, and the gorgeous art of this bus floating in the rain's absolutely fantastic. It does that great thing where there's like a build up of water dripping off one of the wheels, and it just gives it that extra bit of detail that makes it all feel really nice. So very good. And it also looks like some of these vampire bat creatures are just a little bit backlit from the moonlight. The top of them's got that bit of light at the top just to give them that extra accent. So that's really good, and that's the final page. I mean, of course, it's the final page. Like you spent all this time building up. So, and I also love that Skinner and Pearl are both somewhat like already drawn into the main story now, even though they're in different states, even though they don't realize they're in the same story yet. They're both connected to the main ongoing thing, is the Grey Trader, which makes me wonder if Skinner's going to be more of an anti-hero in this story. But we'll see. I don't know, because I never read this far before. I think I might have read this one issue, but I never read all of this arc. I know I didn't.
So we all know how Skinner feels about people like in authority. So if this is supposed to be the biggest big bad, we know he's not going to handle that very well. So
So super exciting. But yeah, honestly, it's a pretty solid. I'm just. I think I'll go with the 9. I think the way it builds up, the way it introduces these new vampire creatures and builds up to the Grey Trader, along with the fantastic art, which has a lot of standout pages, really good. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for that. So that'll take us out the part of the show where we pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and I guess technically top 5 books, although it'll be much less than that this week.
We forgot Spirit World, bud.
I never listed that.
You teased it at the top.
What,
you did. You said, you told me that I read it.
I did not, Matt. You are making it's not on my list. I never said this before.
I could have sworn when I was looking at the books, I counted 4. All right. Well, I read an extra book for no reason, so let's go then.
I mean, you could talk about it if you want, I suppose, but
no, that's fine. Let's close up shop.
All right, you talk about it next week. There's not a lot of books next week.
Sure.
Talk about Spirit World then.
Sure.
Yeah, I never said that at the start because it's not on my list. I'm positive.
Maybe I'm conflating when we were going over the top 10.
The ComiXology, it would have come up in there, yeah.
In that list. All right.
Very good, very good. All right. Panel / moment of the week, Matt. What you got?
Oh man, there's a couple in tech. But I also want to talk about the Supergirl special. When you see her being rescued by Superman, right, when she's late, I thought that's a real nice page. Patridge draws Clark pretty well. But in tech especially, there's the scene that I talked about where Gordon and Selena are talking in the little dive bar, and there's just chaos going around them, and they're still just talking, and how emblematic that is to the story in and of itself. So that one's going to be mine.
Sure. Well, what's my pick? I think it probably has to be. Honestly, it may even just be that first page of Detective with the Arkham ruins. Like, the art is just so gothic and moody. It just got me in the mood so much. I think I'm going to go with that. It's an easy pick, but I think I'll do it. Cover of the week. It's probably the Supergirl special for me. The main cover. Obviously, there's not a lot of choice this week compared to normal because there's only, the three new books.
There's only a couple books.
But yeah. I'm
just checking the Gotham War one real quick, see if there's any.
Just in case.
Batman ones. Yeah. Oh, that one's kind of fun. Adam Hughes. There's an Adam Hughes. It's got Bruce and Selena in a car. It's got some nice purples.
Yeah.
Working in there. That one kind of looks a little ropey. Okay. Yeah, I'll go with the Supergirl special as well. That's a nice cover, the main cover.
Yeah, I know you don't like picking the same thing, but there's not a lot of choice this week.
No, but there is a Jason Shawn Alexander Detective Comics that looks like a Kelly Jones. That I don't like the proportions at play, but the idea that there's the, Batman makes up the shadow. His ears come up, and in between, right above his head, there's the gallows with the little noose hanging over him. I like what that does. The proportions, like his hands look massive. They look like Hellboy's Hand of Doom, right? So, but I just thought that one should be shouted out as well.
Yeah, okay. All right, art of the week.
I can tell you what it's not. It's not the Scorched Earth, because that book was Scorched Earth. It's going to be Patridge for Supergirl.
Yeah, it's a quick one. Patridge for me as well. Obviously, I did like Alexander on Detective a lot, though, but I think I'd probably just give it to Patridge overall. All right, rank the 3 new books, Matt. All right, no, 4. You can include City Boy in this.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Detective Comics, Supergirl Special, City Boy, and then 50 Feet of Dirt in Scorched Earth, #1.
I'll save time. It's the exact same for me. It's Detective, it's Supergirl, it's City Boy, and then some steps, and then the Batman Catwoman book. So there you go. That is the show, and we will be back next week. I'll tell you what's coming out next week, in fact, right this second. It's another light week, of course, so I guess Matt will get to talk about Spirit World then, but next week we have Batman 139, we have Poison Ivy 16, Shazam issue 5, Birds of Prey issue 3, Joker the Man Who Stopped Laughing issue 12, Blue Beetle issue 3, Fire and Ice issue 3, and Superman 78, The Metal Curtain issue 1. So you actually have a decent amount because you'll be reading Poison Ivy and probably Blue Beetle as well.
I'm not caught up on Blue Beetle.
Oh, maybe not.
I won't make any
Okay.
promises.
Fair enough. I thought you were. That's fair enough.
Yeah. No. So Batman, Pete, do you want to know what it's about?
Not really.
Playing right into what our conversation was. New story arc begins. Batman versus the Joker, and more brutal than ever. Not excited.
Nope, not at all. But we'll take it as it comes. So we'll see you next week for more comics from the DC variety. Well, let us know what you thought of this week's books in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. And of course, you can support the content and the podcast over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Maybe get it a little bit early and stuff like that. But that'll do. I'm going to go have dinner, so thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Keep reading comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.